passenger jet takes off, bound for Atlanta, Georgia. 110 people are on board. Then, just minutes into the flight, the aircraft begins to swerve violently above the sky. Finally, it plummets into the Florida Everglades. Now, using advanced computer simulation, we reveal the facts behind one of America's most baffling air crashes and show exactly what went wrong on Flight 592. Disasters don't just happen, they're the result of a chain of critical events. Unravel the clues and count down those final seconds from disaster. America, Florida, Miami International Airport, May 11th, 1996, 11:30 a.m. 24-year-old Jay Smith is being dropped off by his good friend Scott Kleiman. Jay is on his way home to Montgomery, Alabama. Jay checks the board for his flight, ValueJet 592. Due to leave at 1 o'clock. He's there in plenty of time because security is especially tight at the moment. The 26th Olympic Games start soon in Atlanta, and already the FBI have arrested right-wing militants and discovered hordes of bomb-making equipment. Airliners are thought to be a prime target. Booked on the same flight as Jay Smith are Sue and Ron Carpenter. They got married just 3 days ago on a cruise ship in the Caribbean.
Call for ValueJet Flight 592.
In total, 105 passengers are about to board the aircraft. 1:25 p.m. Flight attendant Mandy Summers welcomes the passengers aboard. Her bubbly personality has earned her the nickname Mrs. ValueJet. She's only had the job for a few months, but she's hoping for promotion soon. At the gate, ramp agents load the DC-9's forward cargo hold with passenger baggage, 23 kilos of US mail, and some aircraft parts, 3 tires, and several cardboard boxes labeled COMAT, short for company material. In the cockpit this afternoon is Captain Candlin Kubek.
All right, Richard, how about a before-start checklist?
She has 2,000 hours flying time on DC-9s. And within ValueJet, she's famous for her dedication to the job.
Surprise!
The day before, Candy celebrated her 35th birthday. Her crew threw her a surprise party on board the plane at Dallas. 1:30 p.m. And the aircraft is 30 minutes behind schedule. There have been some minor mechanical problems. The jet's autopilot isn't working properly. A fuel gauge and cabin phone are out, and there's been a fault in the hydraulics backup circuit.
Fuel cross feeds?
Checking through the systems is First Officer Richard Hazen. He's an Air Force veteran with 20 years of aviation experience behind him. Faulty equipment is not an unusual state of affairs at ValueJet. The carrier sells low-cost airfares using old planes bought from around the world. Its fleet is among the oldest in America, averaging 26 years. 141. Mechanics can't fix the autopilot before the flight, so the flight crew disengage it. The other faults are not serious, and the plane is ready to go. 2:03. 63 minutes after the scheduled departure time, the DC-9 begins to accelerate down the runway. And Captain Kubek gently eases its nose upwards. At last, Flight 592 is on its way.
For now, we ask that you just sit back, relax.
Lead flight attendant Jennifer Stearns makes the customary reassuring announcement to passengers. But at 2:10 p.m., just minutes after takeoff, people start to smell smoke. But the temperature is rising, and the smoke is getting thicker by the second. ValueJet Flight 592, with the carpenters J. Smith and 107 other passengers and crew aboard, is in serious trouble. The pilots hear a loud bang on their headphones.
What was that?
I don't know.
They know there's a problem with the plane's electrics because the battery charger has activated, trying to restore power.
We're losing everything.
Then smoke starts to seep into the cockpit.
Clear to 592. We need a meter return to Miami International.
Turn left, heading 270.
Descend to maintain 7,000.
What kind of problem do you have?
It's clear something is badly wrong.
Cockpit and there's smoke in the cabin.
3 kilometers away, Daniel Mulhaupt is at the controls of his light aircraft. He sees a large jet. From his position in the light aircraft, it's obvious to Daniel Mulhaupt there's a crisis unfolding before his eyes.
This
2:13 and 34 seconds. On board the stricken plane, the passengers and crew have passed out. 2:13 and 42 seconds. Just 9 minutes and 27 seconds after takeoff. Flight 592 crashes into the Florida Everglades. From his plane, Daniel Mulhaupt radios ground control at Miami and tells them he's just seen a plane crash. He stays above the site to help the emergency services locate the spot. The crash site is 270 meters away from the nearest levee and 14 kilometers from the nearest road. Rescuers can only reach it by airboat and helicopter. As the networks get hold of the story, searchers continue to look for survivors until the light fails. It's a hopeless task. Within hours, the dreadful news begins to reach the relatives. Susan Smith discovers the terrible truth about her beloved son in a phone call.
There was horrible screaming, and I realized that it was my daughter. She told me that a plane had gone down coming from Miami. And at the moment she told me that, in my heart I knew that it was the plane that Jay was on.
At her home near Atlanta, Georgia, Captain Kubek's mother, Marilyn, also gets the dreadful call.
I really threw myself on the floor and beat the floor in despair. This just can't be true. I'm having a dream, a nightmare. This is not real.
Just one of the children to die, Tabitha Leonard, is killed just a week before her 13th birthday. Now, by rewinding the events of that fateful day and going deep into the investigation, we can reveal what really happened to ValueJet Flight 592. Advanced computer simulation will take us where no camera can go, into the heart of the disaster zone. 1,500 kilometers to the north, in Washington, D.C., National Transportation Safety Board expert Greg Feith watches the news from Miami. He's led 2 major investigations for the Safety Board before, but he already knows this one will be a uniquely difficult challenge.
As I was running around my house packing to leave and having all the TVs on and they were showing aerial views of the accident site, all I could wonder as an accident investigator is how am I going to conduct this investigation when I don't see any visible wreckage?
As Greg assembles the Safety Board's rapid response team, an NTSB official captures the scene with a home video camera. Just 2 hours after the loss of Flight 592, they're en route to Miami and fly over the crash site on the way. It's a sobering sight.
Definitely not a lot of anything out here.
With over 800 DC-9s in service, finding out just what happened is a matter of urgency. But with a crash site like this, Greg knows he'll have to build up a picture of what happened, piece by painstaking piece. The hole in the swamp is 40 meters long and 12 meters wide. Wearing special biohazard suits to protect them from spilt aviation fuel, searchers walk shoulder to shoulder, combing the murky water. Solving the mystery will require all the experience the NTSB have to offer. So senior board members like John Golia, a DC-9 expert, are drafted in. Slowly, sections of the DC-9 begin to take shape on the floor of a hangar. The investigators painstakingly recover, decontaminate, and identify thousands of pieces. There are two parts that would help the investigation more than any other: the flight data and cockpit voice recorders. But the black boxes, as they're often called, remain stubbornly hidden in the swamp. Metal seat frames have melted. Carpets and fuselage coverings have burned intensely. It becomes clear that the smoke that First Officer Hazen reported has indeed come from a devastating fire, one hot enough to melt aluminium. They estimate temperatures in the cabin area must have reached at least 815 degrees Celsius. But even for DC-9 expert John Golia, the source of such an inferno is a mystery. And as one of the police teams fans out across the muddy pools of swamp water, an officer steps on something solid. A moment captured on camera. It's the FDR, or Flight Data Recorder, a major find. But when technicians and officials at NTSB headquarters in Washington get their first look at the flight data recorder, they're not optimistic.
This flight data recorder took a severe hit. And when we first saw it in the laboratory, we had great concern that we were not going to get the data off of it.
After hours of delicate work, the NTSB's analysts have managed to extract the data from the damaged flight data recorder. The evidence is stark. The aircraft seems to have been suffering multiple mechanical and electrical failures for over 2 minutes. Even the FDR itself seems to have failed about 55 seconds before impact. But the safety board can now finally rule out engine failure as the cause of the disaster.
The performance data on the FDR showed us that the engines were running.
If only they can find the second black box, the vitally important cockpit voice recorder, they might find the missing clues they so desperately need.
The flight data recorder won't tell us what was actually happening in the airplane. The cockpit voice recorder could give us a clue as to what the origin of the fire was, because the crew would have been talking about the things that were taking place.
By Sunday, May the 26th, the search has been going on for more than 2 tough, frustrating weeks. Today, the search party is 1 man short. So Sergeant Jimenez, the policeman who'd been one of the first on the scene after the crash, volunteers to go back into the swamp.
The search was very difficult. It's 80 and 90 degree weather, high humidity. Almost every day we had thunderstorms and we had to evacuate the crash site.
Finally comes the break everyone has been hoping for.
I stuck my probe in the water and I knew I had hit metal. I reached down, followed the probe, and pulled out the CVR.
It returned to the cockpit voice recorder.
We need oxygen. We can't get oxygen back there.
Nearly 3 minutes before the crash, Flight Attendant Jennifer Stearns opens the cockpit door. It's clear that the passengers in the cabin are the first to be overcome by smoke. To Fife, this places the fire somewhere behind the pilots. The investigators at Kendall Tamiami concentrate on the area around the jet's passenger cabin. What they discover is shocking. The fire was so intense here that the floor has literally melted away. Could something beneath the passengers' feet, possibly in the forward cargo hold, have started the fire? It's an unlikely scenario. This compartment is officially known as a Class D hold. Completely airtight, it also has a fireproof lining. Any blaze here should quickly burn itself out through lack of oxygen. But Fife decides to check it out anyhow.
We had to go back to the manifest. We had to see what was in that forward cargo hold.
The safety board studies the paperwork to see if the forward hold contained anything suspicious. It indicates that in the hold were 28 kilos of mail and some passenger baggage. But with a bomb or incendiary device already ruled out, investigators move on. The manifest also shows 2 consignments of aircraft parts in the compartment. The shipping ticket also lists 5 cardboard boxes full of parts labeled oxygen canisters loaded in the hold. At first, Greg and his team have no concerns. They think they're empty steel oxygen cylinders as fitted to many different kinds of plane. But then, the whole investigation takes a dramatic turn. These are not simply oxygen cylinders. In fact, they're chemical oxygen generators. Small metal canisters containing a volatile and potentially hazardous mix of compounds. Investigators are horrified.
That changed the whole complexity and complexion of the investigation.
When installed, the generators supply oxygen for passengers in an emergency. They're attached to a face mask with a thin rope that connects to a firing pin. If passengers pull down on the masks, the pin is released, starting a chemical reaction which produces oxygen. During use, the generator's surface temperature can reach 260 degrees Celsius. Could the spare generators housed in the hold have somehow activated and burst into flames? There's just one problem with this theory. The shipping ticket lists all the generators as empty, so they couldn't have been hazardous. Or could they? Investigators interview staff from ValueJet's maintenance company, Sabertech, based in Miami. They discover that the generators in the boxes on board Flight 592 had been removed from 2 McDonnell Douglas MD-82 jets because they were out of date. The rules for disposal are clear. They should either be activated and disposed of properly, or made safe by fitting small safety caps over the firing mechanism. Sabertech produces work cards confirming that the generators were properly dealt with. But then comes a remarkable discovery. Salvage teams recovered 28 of the generators from the swamp. 18 almost intact. Greg and his team examine them carefully. To their amazement, they discover that 9 of the 28 show signs of activation. At least some of the oxygen generators could not have been empty as the shipping ticket said. When they question the Sabertech workers further, they admit that they did not fit any safety caps on the canisters. They just duct taped the cords round the metal canisters or cut them and stuck the ends down with tape. Then they signed off the work cards, even though the correct procedure hadn't been followed. Finally, a stock clerk packed them loosely under a layer of bubble wrap.
I couldn't understand how the process could break down so substantially, and the carelessness that originated on the shop floor could escalate to getting these oxygen generators on the airplane.
But so far, it's only a theory. Greg and the team don't know for sure whether an activated generator could produce enough heat to start a fire.
At this point in time, nobody really had a good understanding of what happens when these oxygen generators start producing oxygen.
They repeat the test, but this time they copy the conditions in the hold more accurately. They use more generators, baggage, and an airplane tire. This time, the fire takes hold in just a few minutes. Then, after 16 minutes, comes a noise that provides the last clue. The tire in the recreation of the hold has burst. The oxygen generators did have the capacity to start and sustain a fire.
You have 144 little blowtorches in essence, and the intensity of the heat escalated from what we found in post-accident testing to over 3,000 degrees.
Investigators now know the critical chain of events that led to the crash of Flight 592. They know why a fire started on board the plane, what fueled it, and why the pilots lost control of the aircraft, leaving everyone on board seconds from disaster. May 11th, 1996. 1 hour to disaster. A Sabertech driver pulls up at gate G2 at Miami International Airport with ValueJet cargo for Flight 592. Inside the boxes are 144 out-of-date oxygen generators, loosely packed. A ramp agent places them around a large airplane tire. The pilots are unaware that they have a dangerous load on board. 30 minutes to go. As the plane taxis to the runway, the loose packing and unsecured cargo jolts one of the generators into action. It begins to heat up. 11 minutes to disaster. The plane taxis to its takeoff position. In the hold, the surface of the metal generator gets hotter and hotter. Soon, the heat ignites the cardboard box and bubble wrap, and the blaze begins. 10 minutes to disaster. Flight 592 takes off from Miami Airport. Even though the hold is airtight, the fire is now blazing fiercely, sustained by the oxygen produced by the generators. 3.5 minutes to go. The sound heard by the crew is one of the tires in the hold bursting, just as it did in the lab test.
The battery charge is kicking in.
We're losing everything.
The battery charger can't help the stricken jet, as the fire is consuming everything in its path, including the control cables that run to the rear of the plane. Captain Kubek begins to lose control of the aircraft. Temperatures in the hold have now reached more than 1,650 degrees Celsius. In the cabin, passengers are becoming desperate as they choke on the toxic fumes.
We need oxygen. We can't get oxygen out there.
Flight attendant Jennifer Stearns rushes into the cockpit, but the pilots refuse to drop the masks, knowing that oxygen would only make the fire worse. 1 minute from disaster. The cabin floor burns and begins to give way. 7 seconds to disaster. Now no one is in control of the plane. The crew are probably unconscious, overcome by toxic fumes given off by the aircraft's interior fittings. Seconds later, Flight 592 nosedives into the Florida Everglades at 800 kilometers an hour. Nearly 3 months after the crash, relatives hold a mass funeral for 48 of the victims, whose remains are interred together. ValueJet eventually takes over another company and becomes Air Tran. Sabertech is fined $500,000 for its part in the tragedy, but goes out of business before the money is ever paid. Since 2001, fire detection and suppression systems have become mandatory.
In the United States, it takes a dramatic event to move the regulatory authorities to change. And in this case, it took the loss of 110 people